Hello. Get ready to dive into a story filled with emotions, twists, and mysteries. Picture yourself in the shoes of the characters, experiencing every moment as if you were right there. Today, you'll hear a gripping tale that weaves together courage, fear, love, and tough choices. Get comfortable and let this captivating story transport you to a world where everything can change in an instant. Jessica had promised herself this would be the start of a new life. The moment she stepped out of the clothing store, a cold October breeze swept through, making her long brown hair dance around her face. She held Ethan's hand tightly, trying to mask the tension in her eyes. While her gaze was fixed on the horizon, her mind was consumed by a single shadow. Michael. Jessica was 23, with a life full of dreams, but everything shattered when that man came into her world. What started as a summer romance quickly spiraled into a recurring nightmare. Since their tumultuous breakup, Michael had refused to let her go. Late-night phone calls, threatening messages, the sound of whispers outside her window. He had vowed to kill her, and Jessica knew, with a chilling certainty that froze her heart, that one day he would make good on his promise. Months before, Jessica made a brave decision. She reported Michael. She could no longer endure the psychological and physical abuse. He had tried to kill her more than once. He poured alcohol over her body and threatened to set her on fire. He tied her to the bed, whispering that it would be her last night as she struggled against the suffocating fear. But somehow, she always managed to escape, thanks to a mixture of luck and sheer survival instinct. When she finally walked into the domestic violence unit at the police department, she found both compassion and indifference. The law seemed fragile against a man like Michael, a well-connected businessman who knew how to manipulate the system to his advantage. Restraining orders were issued, but Michael treated them as mere formalities. He didn't respect boundaries. "I won't leave you alone, Jessica. One day, I will kill you," he once said, his voice as cold as the steel blade he pressed against her skin during one of his late-night break-ins. Despite her growing despair, Jessica clung to a sliver of hope, the hope that, somehow, she could move forward, build a life with Ethan, free from the haunting specter of Michael. Ethan always tried to reassure her. He was gentle, kind, the complete opposite of the storm that Michael had been. "Don't worry, he won't show up," Ethan said again, as they walked to their car after a memorable dinner at their favorite restaurant. But his words couldn't dispel the heavy cloud of apprehension hanging over her. Deep in her heart, Jessica knew Michael wasn't just a bitter memory. He was a living shadow, always lurking. As they drove away from the city center, the narrow streets seemed darker than usual. The night crept in, and the alleys and corners turned into looming threats. Ethan was at the wheel, while Jessica sat stiffly, an uneasy chill crawling down her spine. She kept glancing at the rearview mirrors. Then she saw it, a car, too close, its headlights fixed on them like a predator stalking its prey. A shiver ran through her body. "Ethan, I think we're being followed," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Ethan glanced at the mirror, his brow furrowed. "Maybe it's just a coincidence. Let's take a side street," he suggested, trying to sound calm, though the slight tremor in his hands betrayed him. He turned onto a quieter road, but the car followed, The air around them seemed to grow thinner, as if the space they occupied was being drained. Jessica's stomach tightened as she recognized the vehicle, a black sedan, the same one Michael had driven, the same one she had once sat in before discovering the monster behind his charming smile. Her chest tightened with despair. "Ethan, it's him! It's Michael! Step on it!" she screamed, the panic she had been suppressing finally spilling out. Ethan hit the gas, the car roaring as they sped through the streets. The buildings blurred past as their speed increased, but the car behind them stayed close, unyielding. The back window shattered into countless shards, and Ethan let out a cry of pain as a bullet struck him. The car swerved, spinning out of control. Jessica tried to scream, but the sound caught in her throat as she saw Michael step out of the other car, a gun in his hand, his cold, empty eyes locked on her. Ethan, injured but defiant, tried to shield Jessica, placing himself between her and Michael. "Get out of the car!" Michael roared, his voice seething with hatred. Jessica sobbed, her body frozen with terror. She knew there was nowhere to run. Michael took a few steps closer. The sound of gunfire echoed in the deserted street. The moment felt unreal. Jessica saw Ethan collapse in front of her, his face a mix of disbelief and agony, before his body hit the asphalt. She tried to run, but the sharp crack of another gunshot hit her from behind, and everything went dark. By the time neighbors heard the shots and called the police, it was too late. The night had claimed them, leaving only the echoes of violence and shattered glass scattered across the road. Michael vanished before anyone could arrive, leaving behind lifeless bodies and a lingering cloud of terror. A week later, a letter arrived at the police station. It was from Michael. In it, he confessed everything: the violence, the threats, the plans. But what shocked everyone was the tone of regret he tried to convey. Michael admitted he never knew how to handle rejection, and that something inside him had broken the moment Jessica left him. He wrote that he wanted her dead because he couldn't bear to see her happy without him, to see her building a life where he no longer belonged. But the letter wasn't an apology. It was a farewell. Michael explained there was no place left for him in this world. The letter was his way of explaining, or perhaps excusing, his actions. The next day, he was found dead in a rented apartment, just blocks away from where he had committed the crime. The letter became a pivotal piece, not to justify the unjustifiable, but to reveal a deeply disturbed man consumed by his own darkness. Someone unable to see love as something that could be lost and transformed. The murders of Jessica and Ethan sparked an intense debate about the failures of protective measures and the lack of support for women in abusive situations. Jessica's mother became a powerful voice in the fight for women's rights, determined to turn her pain into a rallying cry. She refused to let her daughter's story become just another statistic, organizing protests, appearing on television, and carrying Jessica's photo everywhere. She made sure her memory wouldn't fade into indifference. Jessica never got the chance to live the life she dreamed of, but the fear that once imprisoned her transformed into a cry for justice that could no longer be ignored. Visiting her daughter's grave, her mother placed fresh flowers and whispered into the wind, "You haven't been forgotten, my dear. Your story changed lives." In the quiet cemetery, among the gently swaying trees, Jessica could finally rest. Though she was taken by one man's violence, Her legacy became the seed for change that touched many lives.